Well, hello and welcome to this inaugural webcast of the future of PLM. I'm joined by Liz Graham of AdaIQ and Oleg of OpenBOM, and we wanted to spend a little time introducing ourselves and what we wanted to do. We actually had two other people invited, but
Of the future of PLM. I'm
uh,
joined by
hold on.
Liz Graham
I
of
need to.
AdaIQ and
Okay, so
Oleg of
it's working.
OpenBOM.
Ads
And
technology, I love it.
Okay, so that means the live streaming is working.
It's not
um,
live.
Well, it's live streaming, so some people
Yes.
might actually be listening to it as we're talking. We had two other people that one dropped because I missed a scheduling change, and the other one got ill, which seems to be going around. I was just in Rome with a dead pope lying in state in the Vatican or in St. Peter's last week. So, but I'm very glad to be here. My name is Michael Finicchio. I've been doing PLM for about 30 years, and kind of all over the place. I mean, I've known Oleg for years. I met Liz. I had the pleasure of meeting Liz at the ACE event last month that Eris put on. So why don't we first go around? You want to introduce yourself, Liz, what you do and what's AdaIQ?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Great to see everybody today. Liz Graham, I'm the CEO of AdaIQ, and AdaIQ is focused on taking the guesswork out of consumer product creation. So you can think of it as a money ball for consumer product development. We're helping to pull together a lot of fragmented data that isn't usually talking to each other to help brands build products customers love. And my background's been at various startups around the Boston ecosystem, which is where I'm based, in digital, physical, and sustainable products. And I've always been motivated by delivering an amazing customer experience. So we can dig in more into how we're utilizing customer feedback in our product. But I'll popcorn it over to Oleg for his intro.
Yeah, great, okay.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Oleg Shilovitsky. I'm CEO and co-founder of OpenBOM. And at OpenBOM, we help customers to make better decisions using data. We help them to organize product information and organize their workflows in the way that we make them agile, connected, and collaborative. And OpenBOM is online and available for everyone, and it's open. And my background was in different PLM ventures. I worked for Dassault, I worked for Autodesk, and was involved with several startups. I live in Boston, and I just want to echo Liz. It's a great environment with a lot of really amazing people and innovative founders and companies. And Michael, your article about roots of PLM in Boston, many years ago I posted on my blog an article. It's a PLM highway which is literally go on 128
The
between PLM
128. Yeah.
headquarters, right? So yeah, so again, excited to be here, Michael. Thank you very much for inviting me, and happy to share more
Yeah,
about the topic.
fantastic. Well, like I said, we originally had Rob Ferroni and Valentina Futuranova that were going to join us. But one of the concepts we were going to talk about with Rob, actually, you formulated with him, Oleg, right? The digital thread as a service. So maybe you could mention that a little and explain that. And then I thought that Liz, because you were working more on the front end, the ideation part, where we're getting customer feedback on the digital thread, it would be interesting to see how that works and how those two worlds come together because traditionally when we talk about PLM, we're always kind of on the back end. We're taking the EBOM, we're pushing it back to ERP or an MES, and we're not really necessarily integrating this feedback from the customer. So maybe we start with Oleg. If you can explain your digital thread as a service, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. Like Rob and I think we had a kind of an online moment of love where we been exploring different topics. And again, something that I didn't mention, I'm publishing Beyond PLM blog gosh, for how many years? It's
A
certainly
lot.
more than
Over
15, a
30,
lot.
you said in your interview when we
No. Yeah, and again, the ideas sharing, I found it's very powerful and helpful to connect with people through the writing, and it was part of what I do for many years, and that's what happened, I think, between Rob and us and myself. So what the idea was is we are discussing digital thread, which is becoming some sort of evolution of PLM that started where the attempt was to, like, the idea was to put everything in a single database. I mean, it worked until it stopped, because the database became too big and the companies became too complex, and everything became too distributed. So I think the natural evolution of ideas of product lifecycle management was how to connect different companies and different processes with the data. And the idea, I think, was not born yesterday, and I think the ideas of this goes like 15 years ago, where companies largely in the defense and aerospace industry realized that they need to connect different pieces of information and processes. But the evolution of this idea was, as we are moving in the world where everything is available as a service, the digital thread uh, can make sense when it connects companies and people and processes as a service, because you don't need to create servers, you don't need to make like 1 year development IT project. So it's just about how to make technology available easier and how to make technologies flexible to connect the different companies and processes together. Now, where I think it's extremely important now is because everything in manufacturing is interconnected. Sim Data brought the topic of digital web. I think there are some companies that developing different connectivities. At OpenBOM, we speak about manufacturing networks, but connectivity, it's a big topic, because you see many businesses, successful businesses in the last 20 years, were created on the idea of network and connection. So industrial network, manufacturing network, this is a graph of connections. And I think this is where we are coming with the ideas of digital thread as a service, just to make it available, to make a platform that capable to work with different companies at the same time, connect them together, connect processes. So this is in a nutshell the idea, but I'm sure we will be coming more and more solid in our thinking, and as we develop it further.
Well, and one of my intents in creating this environment was to talk it through and maybe start thinking about how it would work in the real world, how we're going to connect that to customers and their pains and their use cases. So, Liz, in your world, it's closer to that ideation stage. How do you see? Well, how does what kinds of customers does the AdaIQ help, and how does the digital thread? Is it are you already using maybe this idea of digital thread as a service? And let us know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're focused right now in the footwear space. The early R&D for our academic research was done with a major global footwear brand, and so the things that are interesting to us are there's a lot of unexplored consumer feedback around products. I mean, the obvious places are customer reviews, surveys, user group testing, things like that. But there's a universe of conversations that are happening about products, whether that's Reddit threads or blogs or vlogs. And most companies struggle to really incorporate that information into their product development process. So we're focused on the fuzzy front end, that sort, as you noted, sort of the creation to prototyping, and where we're seeing a lot of opportunity is creating connectivity between all these fragmented pieces of data, and then pulling that innovation thinking into the PLM space. So, typically what we're seeing in most companies that we're talking to is that testing the market, or sort of testing the consumer feedback, sort of stops at a certain point when the design is selected, and then it moves into manufacturing. There isn't the opportunity for sort of continuous listening to, are we headed in the right direction? If we had to make changes, is that going to impact customer reception? And we're focused primarily on consumer products, so probably less critical for aerospace or application, right? But I think we all know we live in a very fickle consumer environment, so trends do shift quite quickly, and the opportunity to reset or modify is significant. And so we can both help shortening that product development cycle, but also thinking about, as you are mostly developing a tops down PLM where somebody's keying in information, like how can we create a bit more of a bottoms up, where information that we're developing in that innovation piece sort of feeds into the rest of the digital thread, and you really start to get that full end-to-end view, and you don't lose the knowledge of what was sort of ideated but discarded. There are a lot of things that I think recycle back. People come up with like, oh, we tried this, and somebody's like, yeah, we tried that 5 years ago. And so I think there's a lot of benefit in pulling all this information through and connecting it in to the digital thread. And I think from the conversation we had at the ACE event, like that was always the original vision of the digital thread, was really, it did kind of pull the whole way through the product creation process.
So, like when we're doing, it sounds like the information that you're getting from the consumers, that it should be much closer tied to the requirements management phase of product development, right?
Absolutely.
And like so with OpenBOM, or in your experience, how? I mean, I know a lot of PLM platforms have kind of a bolt-on for requirements management. PTC just bought Codebeamer a couple of years ago for that. But it's always been a bit of a sidestep, right? I mean, IBM Doors was the standard for so long. I mean, how do you see this connection between a very robust requirements management system? Should that be part of the digital thread, like a separate system of record that's referenced by the PLM system and then enriched by the ideation system? I mean, how do you think that should work? And this concept of a digital thread as a service.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because to me, like, it's a question, like, everything should be included, because when you design product, when you're making decisions, you need to be able to pull right information that will help you to do it. Now, it can come from requirements, it can come from manufacturing, from a supply chain, because those are multiple constraints. Now, the problem that we have is that the environment is very much siloed, and engineers do what they do just because they've been doing it for the last 20 years. So, and we've been buying from these suppliers for the last 15 years, so we'll continue to buy from them. So I think all information needs to be incorporated together, and this is the one of those challenging and complex technological decisions, because let's take like ChatGPT, read everything on the internet. Now it's like, I don't know, like a gigantic number of books and times that you can spend to read it, and then you speak to a person. Likely you speak to the person who read all these books. It's fascinating. I want to speak to someone, I want to talk to someone and connect to the source of information that helps me to understand everything about the requirements of customers about the product and everything that we've been using in our design decisions and reviews and everything that we've been doing in our supply chain decisions. Like I want to get all this information together, connected, and see what is the impact. Specifically for requirements, I think it's becoming increasingly important from place where I see it, because products are becoming much more complex. And for a simple product, it's easier to understand the design intent and what is the impact of the different design decisions and manufacturing decisions. Now, if you have a multifaceted product with the mechanical, electronic, software, and many complex behaviors, and consumer behavior, it's very hard to understand how it all comes together. That's why I think requirements increasingly coming as an answer of let's rationalize everything that we build. Why did we build it in this way? And if we will change it, how it will impact the customer behavior. So I think this is where requirements increasingly will become now as an important element that before it was ignored because these products were simple. Like my toaster, for some reasons, has a Wi-Fi card. I don't know why it's needed, but I mean, it sent me messages. The toast is ready. Okay, I got it. But you can imagine the amount of complexity that goes all over the places that impact. So that's I think it's indeed comes all together as an information that connected. Okay, yes.
So Liz, when you're looking at the customer requirements, you guys are do you have your own searchable database where you're storing all this information and then you're distilling it, and then ideally a digital thread as a service would be able to pull that information out and find the right place to place it in the product lifecycle so that feedback gets taken into account?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got capabilities that you know focus on the requirements. We also have very interesting applications for concept evaluation. So this is where the sort of Moneyball piece of our tech comes in, where you can actually start to stack products that are in development against products that are out in the market right now and evaluate across a very specific set of attributes where your concept will outperform or underperform. And so that data set attaches to the design. You can have half a dozen designs that you're evaluating, and now instead of a handful of people locked in a room sort of horse trading which design's going to advance, you bring more objective data into that.
Quantitative data as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can really start thinking about some of what uh, Oleg was touching on, which is I'll call it sort of the human single point of failure, where decisions get locked in people's brains and not necessarily sort of exposed within the systems that they are using. And I think there's a very powerful opportunity here to when you think about the role of agentic AI, to learn the way decision making gets done within an organization and start to de-risk some of that capability. I mean, we're probably still a little ways away from being able to sort of do the Harry Potter thing where you pull the thread out of someone's head and like drop it into the bowl. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for particularly understanding where trade-offs were made or what decisions were made, and sort of what the information set that went into that decision was. I mean, I think all of us have had lives where we've been building work instructions or MMPs, and sometimes those things get followed and sometimes they get sort of pencil whipped, depending on sort of where the teams are in the life cycles. So I also I think the breadcrumbs that get left are an important part of what will make the digital thread continually useful in informing the systems that it ties into.
Absolutely. And um, in your experience so far, I mean, you guys are at the point where you're talking to your customers, right? You said you were talking to how I would just like to understand, because if we're talking about the future of PLM, we're obviously going to be talking about agentic AI. We're going to be talking about MCP, and all this stuff. But in some talks I had with some guys, some customers and some analysts, there seems to be a lot of resistance, particularly from the CFOs, saying, "Well, it's not mature enough. It's changing every day. How can I even back up this thing, or do I have to back up all the LLMs at what point in time, and with how many parameters, and was it the queries?" So how, in the real world, with your customers in the real world, how, when you're talking about using AI in that context, how are you getting around that kind of resistance where the CFO might be saying, "Well, no, that's too much money, and besides, it's all speculative and it's going to be hallucinating anyway"?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. The core, the core that you have to build is trust. I mean, people have to be able to trust the information that you're providing and the decisions that they're taking off of them. And so that's a lot of where our focus is right now, and we're showing customers where our data sets have really distinct information. If you compare it to what ChatGPT would put up, there's maybe 20% overlap, and there's really significant advantage in having something that's tailored to your enterprise and a curated array of information that's being used. I think that we are still early in the process of working with customers on bringing their data into our platform. A lot of what we've been doing for our early pilots is using publicly available data to create insights to, again, sort of build that trust, like, hey, you can rely on the information that we have, and just think about how much more exciting and useful this would be if we can pair it up with the information that you're already using. And I think, dare we say, sort of the tariff environment has also forced a lot of people to think about
Right.
how to optimize. Oleg, I'm sure you're deep in this space right now, but you know we're seeing a lot of opportunities to to create interlocks between these different systems that help people make the best selection very early in the process, even in a sort of dynamic environment. But I'd be interested, Oleg, since you tackle more of the supply chain and back end side, some of the things that you're hearing there too.
Yeah, great.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. See, the one of the things that we see a lot with our customers is that they are looking how to move fast and circle back and continue the improvement. So there's a lot of questions here. I just bring example from one of the customers. The challenge is that they design machines, complex equipment, and the components there are coming again from different places, and ordering them on time, and those components are expensive, is important. Otherwise, they will be delaying the project. So they delaying project that cost $1 million to 2 months to customer. It's a huge impact. Now, how to make it not to be delayed is to plan ahead of time. To plan ahead of time, you need to collect all this information, and you need to be able to connect this information with different people that involved into this process. Now, those are not huge companies. This can be companies of hundreds of people, like not huge companies. And for those companies, the existing paradigm of PLM just doesn't fit, because the existing paradigm of PLM is pretty simple. It's like 30 years ago. Let's put everything in the single database. Guess what? You just cannot do it for these companies on this scale, because this is like one big space of enterprise, but those companies just not getting any excitement about this, the systems. They want to be connected. They want to send information to contractor. They want to send information to people that involved in the design. They just cannot do it with the traditional systems. This is where I believe the paradigm shift is coming. The old PLM practice was mostly about let's organize a single database of everything, solve the problem. Guess what? If you have two PLM systems, they still cannot talk together today. Even if you put them on Amazon, they still the same databases that you need to export Excel from one system and files and put it in another. So it's just something that doesn't work. And I think that this is the place where the technologies that we developed at OpenBOM with the very non-unique name collaborative workspace that helping the people to put information and make changes differently. It's like, I will give you a simple example. You can create Google spreadsheets and make changes simultaneously, even if you work in multiple companies and you own only part of the spreadsheet. You can do it today with OpenBOM. I can share a piece of information between two companies working with two different accounts. Try to do it with any PLM system. You cannot. Why? It's because the database one, database two, and no one was thinking that these databases can work together. So this is where the real digital thread starts, because you start connecting pieces of information together and you start making this information available to everyone. So that's where I think the starting point, and I believe that the opportunity is gigantic, because it's how, like, 100 years ago, the cigarettes were acceptable only for men, and everyone was trying to sell them cigarettes. The market saturated. So, and then everyone figured out that we can sell cigarettes to women. The
And
market
kids.
jumped up. Yeah, it was a very interesting marketing propaganda around this. Maybe for another conversation about marketing, Michael. But the point is that today everyone is trying to sell PLM to enterprise. It's like they cannot make PLM enterprises to buy more PLMs anymore. They already have, every company have 2, 3, 4 PLM softwares and organization. Like, there are like a lot of them. So when now PLM system dies, you can replace it. But they open the market. It's open the market to the connectivity between these companies, and this is where I think digital thread as a service can come, because it will connect all these companies in the network.
But will this be like new vendors that are going to do that? In other words, so we already have classes of vendors like EQ Technologies, right? That has their EQ thing. We
Mhm.
have vendors like Boomi that do more of a data as a service. We have even things like Tableau, where you just do a huge BI, a mashup of all your data. Is it that, or it was very exciting at ACE when Eris introduced Innovator Edge, which is a way of abstracting some of the capabilities of Eris and then connecting that to other companies. I'm trying to understand, like, how where does it get implemented, the digital thread as a service? Is it going to be a new standard that each PLM company is going to have a? I mean, let me roll that back. Is it like a new OData standard where every PLM platform will expose a certain number of services, or providers like Liz will expose their data through a certain service, and then is it the PLMs that are going to be pulling on that service? Is it becomes a digital thread as a service bus? I'm just trying to understand what you think it would look like. And then Liz, of course, you can react as one of the people on the thread.
I think thinking about standards, it's a little bit like we are past this stage. I think for the last 30 years, you've been trying standards as a magical thing, and I think we created standards. There are standards. But JSON is a standard, right?
Mhm.
So for some companies, XML is still a standard and they use it. If you think about MCP that you mentioned, MCP is a standard that just recently was invented by invented and started to implement. How broadly it's used, well, we can see it. So it will be standards created in this world that will allow to us to connect pieces of information. But you can think internet to a certain degree is a standard, and we can communicate with the information that's stored online. So I think it will be an evolution here that will help us to understand this information in a better way and make sense of this information based on what we have. Some information will be connected, some information will be managed by a system. But I don't see it's like an ultimate, okay, let's create standard, put everything in a single place, solve the problem. I think it's going to happen because people are, the companies are innovative. They want to move forward. Like you cannot bring them to kind of single level and say, this is what you do. And with regards to information, companies are doing it all the time. So they put information in Excel and send it. You cannot stop this. No one can. Like people come into OpenBOM making manipulation, exporting data. Like we are open, they sending this data in Excel, like because everyone understands it. So it's again, then when they realize there is an opportunity to share, they share. But it's an evolution. I don't see it as like stop today and tomorrow will be different.
So Liz, how are you thinking about that in terms of you're going to be more of a person giving feedback rather than consuming it, right? So how is AdaIQ? How do you guys see it putting your stuff on the digital thread? Obviously, you want to protect it because you don't want anybody to do it. You only want your subscribers to be able to get that information from AdaIQ. So how are you looking at that problem?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in the space of I'd say creating kind of a hybrid where we can either deliver as a data as a service or have more of a SaaS like experience, and some of that's going to be driven by the customer preference. And to your point about Tableau, do they want information piped into their BI environment so they can mash it up with other capabilities that they have? You I think the more kind of into the enterprise space that you go, the more protective folks are of their environments. And so we want to be able to make it easy to work, have endpoints that people can connect in with. I'm really sort of fascinated by Oleg's perspective on this collaboration and multi-company environment that everybody lives in. I mean, very few companies are sort of so vertically integrated that they're doing it all themselves, right? And you think about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I guess it was probably closer to 10 than 15, as the Google suite of products was starting to make its way into companies. My experience was companies that were sort of leaning into innovation, grab that capability to do a lot of collaboration. We had the example earlier of sort of sharing a Google sheet around. It's very easy to collaborate on those documents, but then there are other places where everything's completely locked down, and maybe that's because of contractual reasons or just the leadership decisions. So I fully agree with Oleg's perspective that it's there probably isn't one standard that's going to be universally applied here. I think it's going to be there are companies that already have the DNA where they are collaborating across systems, just not in this specific space, and they're going to be the ones that will be, I think, kind of first to see the benefit of this opportunity. And then other industries, because of their constraints or their approach, will continue to sort of have this challenge of how do you connect things, the benefit of kind of the vision I see that Oleg describes is, everyone's going to have real-time information of like where things are, what's going on, where are the holdups. And, especially if you're working asynchronously across geographies, I mean, that's incredibly valuable for speed speed to market.
Mhm.
And
Oops, we're getting that
so
up.
I
we're
do
gonna.
think I
Okay.
do think we're going to see the need for some culture shift and reinvention of the way companies are working, and maybe it's competitive pressure that that creates that environment.
It makes me think about the fact that PLM has always been, of course, a system of record, and it's been really good at connecting to systems of engagement. CAD, ECAD. What it hasn't done, and maybe what we're really talking about here, and AdaIQ seems to be a great example of a system of insight, right?
Hmm.
So maybe that really what we're doing with digital thread as a service? Are we taking the existing infrastructure of systems of engagement, systems of record that we know how to work with as engineers and we've been working with it for a long time, and now we're trying to go over the boundary towards this AI future, and what we're trying to do really is connect intelligently these systems of insight without having to dump my entire database, without having to expose my IP to the whole world, and protect my own intellectual property. What do you think? Is that another way of saying it, Oleg?
Well, I'm kind of there are two things here that I would like to unpack in what you said. So first, is where I completely and I agree and seen it many times. Is what you said. People pulling systems like Google Spreadsheet, starting sharing data because they can, and this is what they need. They need to work. So that were the system of engagement, Michael, that you brought are connecting together. Why? It's because if the only way for me to engage with someone is to pull this information to Google Spreadsheet and share it, I will use it in a company. If no one gives me anything else, I will use it. So is it the most optimal system for engagement? Probably not, but this is what we have today for some companies. This is what leadership allowed them to do.
Mhm.
In the past 20 years, SharePoint was the system because it was like the only way to share something, so people were doing it. Now, but I would not be placing it only as an engagement without underlining data, because we are engaging between people, but the information that I would like to have access to, and the information that will allow me to be smarter. It's actually from these systems of records and the connectivity between them, and actually in the thread in this network. So it's like Airbnb. They have a network of providers and a network of people that wants to rent. So they're getting a lot of intelligence around these pieces. So the same amount of intelligence we can get from the graph of data that is connected between different companies. So this is the underlying foundation of OpenBOM, connecting to other databases, getting this information in an easy form, building intelligence. This is where the power. But then on the other side, people are communicating, and as people communicating, the data is lost. Let me give an example. If people communicating on engineering change order, they're making some assumptions, talking to each other, making decision. Where this decision is stored? Like where the reasoning about this decision is stored? Nowhere. So this is what system of engagement allows us to capture. But then we've been buying this part for the last 20 years for different prices. How can I get this information? This is a system of records. So it's all intertwined together and making a big, giant product knowledge graph with all connected information that's becoming an industrial knowledge and industrial data, becoming more smarter. I remember like many years ago when we just started to use Google, people said Google sometimes bring better results than someone else. That's how they went to the market. Might not remember. But then someone else said, "Oh, I'm sitting in the room and I'm connecting to internet. I can use a Google. I can be the smartest person in the room because I will get the answer." So today the same, by the way, with ChatGPT. So I can be much smarter if I will start talking to ChatGPT. I want to have the same capabilities, connectivities between data and bringing this intelligence in requirement work, in the planning, and any decision making. And it's only will come through the connectivity and building this graph of information. And that's why I think it will become different. And this is where we build a differentiation at OpenBOM as well.
But what about the systems of insight, though? Where are they going to sit? Because we're going
Well,
to need the analytics behind that, or maybe that's where Liz becomes one of the providers of those systems of insight. That's Liz is AdaIQ would be providing insight in terms of consumer feedback, as opposed to maybe another provider that would be looking at the IoT data of the real-time performance of the product and giving performance feedback. So maybe there's a part of this digital thread as a service that needs to be able to take into account the insights that can be gained, and those need to be somehow pushed into, again, the requirements, so that the product reflects what the people want, and also is repaired when the performance isn't up to snuff. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of the opportunity for creating I mean, if Oleg has his ability to build these knowledge graphs, then you can create a continuously learning environment that's taking in that sort of live IoT feedback from from actual product performance. It's taking in and the consumer perspective, the user perspective. All of these things interlace with manufacturability and design,
Supply chain availability as
yeah,
well.
all of those things. So I think that and probably not to date myself, but probably not so much our generation, but my daughter and the folks of her generation, they're not going to be held by sort of controlled ways of accessing information. They are going to want natural language approaches. They are going to want to be talking with their sort of smart glasses to feed them information about things, so they're not having to have the delays of keying information into systems. And so I do think that this direction helps free up a lot of innovation and capability for systems to provide the combination of that system of record information with the insights that enable it to create recommendations or direction, or sort of have that real-time connectivity and ability. I think it's and the ability for people to just interact with it in whatever language they want, and it's I think it'll definitely be a multi-provider environment where and one of the limitations of the current large language models is they are generic. And so if you're talking about some of these deeply specialized product environments, you're going to need something that actually can go deep and understands those workflows, understands the elements that go into it, and the risk involved. So I think it's not going to be as easy as just slapping a sort of agent or chatbot layer on top of this digital thread. I think it's going to probably be some deep vertical expertise to really be able to deliver meaningful insights.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think another place companies are going to struggle is when you're faced with some of the monolithic PLM systems, right? Like the big three, and particularly the two biggest of the big three. They're very much, this is all the information, where they're not as open, and it's going to be really hard if the customer's gone down the road with one of the more monolithic PLMs to take advantage of digital thread as a service. If they're using OpenBOM or Era, something really open, it's really easy. Once they start using 3D Experience or Team Center, I think that it's a little bit more complicated. What do you think, Oleg?
Well, this discussion about monolithics, I think it's going a little bit crazy for the last couple of days, and I got
Yeah.
a lot of comments. I think there is no chance for the future that all information that we are talking about will be located in the single database. I mean, this is impossible. I think this is not sustainable, and companies will need to figure out, like like Liz, you said, I want to talk with someone with a deep expertise. So, and I'm considering this is the same association. Like, I want to talk to some specific database of suppliers, or I want to talk about some specific database of experience of people with the footwear that they shared, and this information is collected. So this all pieces of information are collected, and today I like the trend. It's called data products. So you create these data products in a way of models that allows you to blend the decision and information from this. I think that will become a more way of communicating and gathering this information and then providing this information to others. So the system that is controlling, for example, for a specific company development process, can pull information from other data products, and at the same time also can share information about specific elements of this process. Now the problem here is business model, because for the last 30 years, the only business model that was sustainable is to lock data and upsell applications. So this is how the enterprise business model was developed. You find the person with the title and budget in a large company, and then you add to his name a word management, and you get an enterprise software now. So because you can go to this person with this domain expertise and word management to ask him for a budget, and he will put data and he will do something. It's across everything. You get all possible variation. Like if we can break this paradigm, I think I mean, it's unknown. I don't think it is in the process of being changed, especially when I'm hearing the people that still supporting and saying it's like monolithic. Let's put everything in the single database. Like SAP is placing all PLM, MRP, ERP, MES,
Everything into
like all
S4HANA.
together. Okay. And then we have the saw, and it's everything is together. I mean, it's where it will go. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually worked with Airbus on that particular question, but they've made the strategic decision to go all through the experience, and it makes it incredibly hard to even imagine doing microservices or inspired or what we'd call here DTaaS. Well, we're getting close to the end. I mean, maybe you guys have some closing comments, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so exciting about this is that people are going to, my experience is people get frustrated with the limitations of the systems that they're working in, and they find creative ways around it. Whether and your opportunity here is to build something that will provide fast and intuitive and informed solution for folks, or your frustrated engineers are going to sort of go out and explore and use these emerging tools to kind of do some end runs. So I think that this is an exciting time to create some of these capabilities, develop some really powerful ways of pulling this information together in a way that really makes it like maybe not a joy to work with, but certainly like much more enjoyable than kind of the current state of play. So that's what I'm excited about.
Well, you bring up a good point there, because you mentioned your daughter. I think that if the tools don't evolve relatively quickly, when that next generation comes, there's going to be a big problem, because they're going to be like, no way, Jose, I'm not going to use that old I can't do that. I'm not going to work that way. That's going to be a bit of a conflict when we have this generational change. Oleg, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Liz, you mentioned about the power of the data and connectivity. And I, I think the data is becoming more valuable to companies than applications.
That's
And
the no oil, right?
uh, yeah, we can call it or whatever. But I think what companies are more focusing is how they preserve the data, how to organize this information, and how they can reuse it. And the people will be able to switch between applications, and still the focus will be how to preserve the history of data, and how to preserve all information, because there are decisions will be coming from the data. And if I use PLM 1 for 10 years and I am moving to PLM 2, I'm mostly concerned how I can get access to information and intelligence from my processes from PLM 1. Because if it will die, then I'm losing the business. I'm losing the reasons why people buy it and why we decided to switch from this design to another design 15 years ago in another PLM system. Like, this is really going to be about data more, and in a different ways to organize this data, language models, graphs, like many ways. It's going to be about data, not about the applications and the database that support this application. It's certainly not there. So that's just my thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like the shift. I remember when I was working for HP, we were only caring about servers for a long time, and then suddenly this new concept of DaaS basically the distributed disk systems came out, and suddenly that was the big thing because we even realized back then that data was important. Well, I wanted to sincerely thank Oleg and Liz. Thank you guys. We're going to try to do this again in a couple of weeks, probably around May 19th. Hopefully, our other two panelists will be more available. There was Valentina from Aveva and Rob Ferroni, the PLM plumber. And I had another idea of another guest or two. And I think we'll continue on the same vein of digital thread as a service and connecting from ideation all the way back to the asset, which is what Valentina can talk about. Um, and so I look forward to, and then of course we can get Rob's perspective because he was the other genius behind this DTaaS concept besides Oleg. So anyway, I wanted to say thank you and goodbye to everybody, and hopefully we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. And take care. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.